Ask the Podcast Coach for August 5th, 2023. Yep.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Collison from The Average Guy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. And happy, well, I shouldn't say happy this, but if you tweet or promote that we're live, I'll retweet that. So if you want to do that now, if you're just joining us live and you want to do that, get that stuff out there.
Now, the big question...
Or exit.
I'm going to say, that's it. Like, is an exit? Because that sounds weird. Go exit. Like, no, don't leave. Wait. Yeah, it's kind of weird with that whole thing.
Do something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Threads is like... I'm having a hard time getting over to Threads because it's not in a browser, so it's harder to do. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
What's really weird about Twitter is for the longest time, I was like, I don't see any difference. I'm like, it looked like Twitter. And now somebody took the ad knob and turned it to 11. It's like one tweet, 3 ads, one more. And I'm like, and the people that I'm following apparently have all left. Like, there's just nothing over there. And I was because I was kind of like, Twitter. I'm like, I kind of feel sad that, we basically there's now right social media, which is Twitter, and left social media, which is Threads. I'm like, really? There was a clip on YouTube I saw of Joe Rogan with Jim Gaffigan. And here's the thing. You ready for the new Dave bumper sticker?
Yeah, go.
Don't try to be the most downloaded show. Try to be the most talked about.
Wow.
And Joe Rogan is really good at that because he was telling Jim Gaffigan that there were some sort of agents, CIA, something, in the January 6th crowd that were kind of spurring things on. And Jim Gaffigan was like, so wait, what you're telling me is, because that sounds a little wacky. And they both just shared their opinions on why and this and that, and realized we're now going to get a bad review because we mentioned something political. But it was just interesting. I'm like, oh, wait, there it is in the wild. Oh, my God, it's a dialogue. Look at him. They're having a dialogue. And it was, you just don't have that anymore. So, but you know what makes...
In some spots, some folks are dialoguing still.
But you know what makes the world always better? That's right. A nice hot cup of Java that is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. If you want to look better, because I say this all the time because, well, it's true. If when your audience is searching for a podcast, they're going to see you before they hear you. And I've used Mark for this show, Ask the Podcast Coach, for the School of Podcasting, for the Podcast Rodeo Show. And if he was awful, I wouldn't have used him multiple times, but he's really, really good. And what's great about it is not only is Mark an award-winning graphic artist, he's a podcaster. And so he's going to sit down with you one-on-one. He's going to look at your website. He's going to listen to your show because he wants everything to gel together. That is branding, my friends. And if you need a whole website, if you need a league man, and if you have anything that you want to look good, well, then go over and see my buddy Mark at podcastbranding.co. You are not going to get that kind of service from some person on Fiverr, and I've been ecstatic with everything that I've had Mark do. So there's only one place to go, podcastbranding.co.
Big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there at Based on a True Story, podcast.com. If you haven't checked it out yet, you should. He's doing these weekly episodes where he looks at a couple past things that he's looked at. This week, Rush, Patton, and Braveheart. So if you want to get a quick look in on those 3 movies, you can do it right now, based on a true story podcast.com. Big thanks to, he's just a great guy too. I mean, we just got the greatest sponsors in the world.
We do.
Right? I mean, between Mark and Dan, 2 best guys that I know. Check it out today. And Dan, thanks for your sponsorship.
All right. So Jim, what would you say to this guy? It was interesting. I was over in my favorite place, Reddit. And it's always interesting over there. But they
keep going back there. That's
Hey, here's the thing. They're not banning me anymore. I think they had some sort of powwow, and they're not kicking me out. But I saw this, and this guy was talking, it's always about growing your audience. And so this guy advertised on Overcast, which is not cheap depending on the category that you pick. Because I remember I did it, and I want to say it was like $300, and it's like closer to 6 or 7 if you want to advertise in the business section now. So this is what he said. My Overcast ad ran for 30 days, and he got similar results to somebody else that he mentioned. But he said I had 112,000 impressions, 949 clicks, that's 0.8%, and 29 subscribers, 3%. So remember when I said 3% will take action? Again, 3% have taken action. There was a temporary bump in downloads, but it doesn't seem to have stuck. A year or so ago, I ran a Podcast Addict ad. My subscribers grew for some time after that, but currently I have over 1,000 subscribers on Podcast Addict, but that's not reflected in my downloads. Mine only average around 50 to 75 downloads per episode, even though he has 1,000 subscribers. And he just said, it's a long game. So what would be, because to me, it seems obvious that there's an issue there. What would be your thoughts to this person? Because he drove traffic to the podcast. Yeah. But it's not sticking around.
But it didn't stick. Well, you got to do some self-evaluation.
There you go.
Point, right?
I was like, this one seems kind of obvious. Hey, maybe your show isn't as good as you think it is.
Well, okay. Maybe. But maybe your target on Overcast was wrong. Or maybe the listeners, the demographic of listeners on Overcast could be a demographic that doesn't match you. And listen, just because people do not want to listen to you doesn't mean what you're doing is bad or wrong.
Yes.
Right? It just may be your style. It may be the way you do things. Home Gadget Geeks is not for everybody just because we're all over the place on topics. And it's not a how-to. And people today mostly want a 15-minute how-to, right? On technology stuff. That's not, we're a community building, long form.
Right.
We like hanging out with each other, right? That's not for everybody. And I just have to realize that. And I'm like, I get 600 to 1,000 downloads on that thing. That's good enough. That's what I'm going to get. Does that mean my show is bad? Well, there may be parts of it that don't appeal to the general mass. Does that mean it's bad? I don't think so. It just means it doesn't appeal to the general population.
Yeah, I want to roll my comment back. That was a little harsh. It's a little harsh.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It's true though. Some of that's true though. Yeah. Like it may not be great.
But
right?
Anytime you do any kind of advertising, there is the ad that you put. So whatever ad copy you put to get people to click, there's that. There's the landing page you sent them to. So if you just sent them, on one hand, the goal there is to get Overcast subscribers. So, there is no landing page. And then, the copy on that, and then the actual, content. So if they click play on your show and it starts off with, 35 seconds of music with no talking, they might go, okay, whatever's going on. So, I just saw that, and I even said to the person, I go, you might, I said, if you want, send me a link, I'll do a little review on the Podcast Rodeo show for you, at least just to make sure your opening is okay. So, but I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, you just never know. Go back and listen to some early Tom Petty, and you go, he's not good. His voice is it's different compared to what was coming out and what people were doing in those days. Bob Dylan is another one. He's not a particularly talented vocalist, right?
No.
But there's right? There was something that was endearing, or something that works, or something that he did right,
Here's the thing that Bob Dylan did. He resonated with his audience. Everybody was like, there must be some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief. That's right, man. Here, you want to hit this? That was basically
right.
But no, Tom Petty is. What's weird is if you go to Spotify and click Tom Petty, that guy had hit after hit after hit. Mm-hmm. Don't come around here no more.
His vocal style is not, you wouldn't think, if you listen to it, we listen to it now in hindsight and you kind of go, oh yeah, I love Tom Petty, Free Fallin', all that other stuff. Yeah. But if you just think pure audio quality, you're kind of like, yeah, this isn't that great. So not everybody, I mean, not the best stuff doesn't always go to the top, right? And sometimes, and you don't know why. I do know this: they all worked hard to get there.
Oh,
Bob
absolutely.
Dylan worked hard
and got booed off the stage when he went electric. They're like, "Wait, you sold out, dude."
Yeah,
he's up there, he's blowing in
Tom
the
Petty
wind.
worked hard.
Yeah,
he worked hard to go where and probably party too hard too, but he worked hard to get where he was. So I think there's some of that. You just got to keep, you got to just keep going. You got to just believe in yourself. You got to do it your way.
Here's something you just mentioned: two people, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty. I'm going to throw in Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks,
for sure.
Not an amazing vocalist. If you think about it, her range is about 7 notes. She's not hitting like Mariah Carey notes. And I was watching her because she's out on tour, charging insane amounts of money to go hear her stand on stage, occasionally twirl around and sing. But think about it: Stevie Nicks, Tom Petty, Bob, what's his name, Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
Yeah, what do they all have in common? Very unique voices.
Yeah.
Like the minute you hear Tom Petty and he's going, she's a good girl, little mama. It's like, okay, that's Tom Petty. Same thing. Geddy Lee is another guy. I was talking about this with my friend. There are some people that the minute they start singing, you're like, if it sounds like a goat, it's probably Stevie Nicks. So, and those are people that have had careers forever. So my point to bring this back to podcasting, be yourself.
Yeah,
Tom Petty wasn't trying to sound, although by the end he kind of sounded like Bob Dylan. You couldn't understand a word he was saying. But Coach Dave says, in terms of that whole thing with the show that wasn't working, there's the show you plan, the show you deliver, and the show that is received. Exactly. There's always that same thing with live when you do a presentation. That's always fun. Tom Petty gave hope to believe average singers everywhere. Yes, he's proof that you still need great songs. Yep, that's actually to me. I always think it's
those songs are great. Like,
oh, come on, American Girl, Free Falling. They had a cool hook. That was.
I don't think Free Falling is that great. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's that great of a song, right? But
it's a story.
Somehow it,
And think about American Girl. Yeah, American Girl is another one that's a story. Let's see. Somebody gonna be you around some. What is that song? Oh, that's another one. There's 3 voices of Tom Petty, because then he has it don't really matter to me. I'm never gonna be free. You don't have to live like a refugee. And that's one that he has, because I always say, laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain. There is another reason people listen, and that's, what the heck is this about? Tori Amos is a great singer that I have King's X is another great band that half the time I'm listening, I'm like, what does it mean? Double Rainbow, what does it mean? I'm like, I have no idea what these lyrics are about. So then you listen to it again, you're like, yeah, it still doesn't make sense. And after about the 4th time, you're like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care anymore. So
they're all hard workers.
That's
it. Because they worked their craft. They did the best with what they had.
Oh, there you go. Neil Diamond. Yeah, definitely. Neil Diamond always sounded constipated. It was like, I am, I said, to no one there, even the chair. Round they coming to America. All right. Now here we go. Taylor Swift. I would not recognize a single song of hers. Yeah. Taylor Swift. Have I told the Taylor Swift story on this? This is from Eric K. Johnson.
Tell it again.
Who, Eric
yeah.
is, but he took his daughter to Taylor Swift. And he also has been at a meet and greet with Usher. Okay, so let's compare the two. Usher might as well have been a cardboard cutout. You walked in, they took your phone, they said, do not talk, do not, just stand next to Usher, we will take your phone, take your picture, and you will exit. Wow, how warm and fuzzy. Taylor Swift had everybody sit down at round tables that had white linens on them, so you feel like you're at a wedding. She came around to you and talked with her assistant, and then later you got a handwritten note, we're assuming from Taylor, but probably not, and it mentioned what you talked about. and said, "Thank you for coming." And I was like, whoa, that's next level stuff.
She knows how to take good care of her audience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Steve Colbert. Is that right? Steve Colbert tells a story of he, in the early days, he saw Taylor and introduced himself, and he wasn't as big of a deal as he is now. But he said, "Hey, could you do me a favor? Would you just say hi to my daughter?" And like, Taylor treated his daughter like she was the superstar. You know, went over there and just made a big deal about her and went on and on about how great she looked. And like, that's a talent I think we miss sometimes, you know, of just making other people. I think sometimes we think we're in this for us, and it's what we say that matters. And I actually think it's the way we treat other people.
That's it.
I think that's what really matters.
It's Maya Angelou. There's somebody hit that quote. It's something like people, but they will remember how you made them feel. I forget the first part of that. But yeah, and that's really, you know, if we look at, I know this sounds like a music show, but it's really, we're talking about podcasting. Bruce Springsteen, another guy, not exactly the greatest singer, you know, when you think about it. And, but people love Bruce because he was, you know, my dad told me to cut my hair and that whole 9 yards. And, but he was, talking about the working man. So the guy working in the steel mill is like, Bruce is singing for me. And, you know, and what's funny is people don't listen to his lyrics because every time we feel patriotic, we play Born in America. And if you listen to the lyrics of that song, it's really not a fan of America. So it's like, okay. Geek Homeworld says, Dave is saying, find your voice, be authentic, be unique. I need to ask her if I can actually use her name. But anyway, there was a member of the School of Podcasting, and she's brilliant. She's just brilliant. And she sent me her first episode, and it was okay. You know, a couple little technical things, but it was okay. But what was weird is when she would come to, every Friday I do a thing called Lunch with Dave, and we all just hang out and share and ask questions and things like that. And when she talks, she's kind of bubbly and friendly and just kind of laid back, you know? And I asked her, I said, it sounds weird that you're kind of doing like an NPR style. And, you know, she was very serious. I'm talking about this now, and here's the thing. And I said, it's just completely different than the person I see in Lunch with Dave. And she had a friend, tying it back into our first point of, you know, get somebody to listen to it. And they said, it doesn't sound like you're being yourself. And so she re-recorded the exact same episode, took a couple of my suggestions. Like, she had a much better call to action at the end. I was like standing ovation. And I listened to it and I was like, this is so much better. I go, what did you do? And she said, I just decided to be myself. And I was like, it's so hard to be somebody else. And so, so definitely be yourself. Because if you're trying to be somebody else, you know, look, our chat room is the best. Everybody's got the quote for me. Thank you, Craig. And thanks, Uncle Marv. I've learned that people will forget what you said, but people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Thank you, Craig. Mm-hmm. And thanks to Uncle Marv for looking that up for me. I always appreciate that. And then Coach Dave says, almost all the voices you mentioned this morning, unique with a great origin story, coming through the noise, are the ones I most enjoy listening to. Yeah, I mean, there are people, you know, Bruce Springsteen's charging in. Well, so is Taylor. What's her name? I want to say Taylor Hawkins, but that's the drummer of the Food Fighter. Taylor Swift. You know, people are spending insane amounts of money to go see her. The other thing that I saw a clip of Taylor Swift and I saw a clip of Stevie Nicks, and both had issues on stage. Like, Taylor Swift went out and her mic just dead. And so she's like, huh? And nothing there. And she's kind of like, okay, hold on. And everybody's like, yay. You know, I'm seeing something that's not the normal concert. And she's checking the on-off button and she's hitting it. But meanwhile, I'm like, where is the crew? Like, the crew's not watching the show apparently. And so she's like, and she's kind of like, well, okay. And she's looking at her watch. She's like, okay. And making fun of it. And then they brought her out a new mic and she's like, okay, let's see if this works. And it does. And everybody yayed and the concert went on. But I just thought it was funny how, like, what do you guys do when things don't work? And Stevie Nicks decided to play the song Sarah from Fleetwood Mac, which apparently she had not done in many, many moons because it's a solo show. And they started it and she totally missed like when to sing. And so she's sitting there and they're kind of going and they're just playing the song. They're not paying attention that, hey, Stevie was supposed to start the first verse about, 20 seconds ago. And so she finally just looked over at the guitar player and said, I have no idea where I am. And so she's like, hold on. And she just said, look, we haven't played this song in about 20 years. Somebody threw it up and said, we should do that tonight. We didn't practice it. Apparently we should have. Let's try that again, shall we? And I think what it was, she forgot the lyrics because the guitar player came over and whispered in her ear. And you see her go, wait a minute, baby. And that's the first line of and so that
once you get started, then she's fine.
It was fine. But also, I would never I adored Stevie Nicks growing up because, well, she was hot. But I was thinking to her, it's interesting because people are going nuts at this concert, and she literally just stands there and sings, and her band stands there and plays. And I was like, wow, no. I mean, they had a cool backdrop and stuff, but I was like, I don't know that I'd pay over $100 to, But again, that's why you have fans. Some people are going to like you and some people are not. John is asking, let me hit the old tagger here, says, how do you like the USB XLR PodMic now that you have been using it for a while? I actually like it. It's for me, I kind of don't care what the mic is. I like it because it's a little clearer than the SM7B. But I actually was telling, you ready for me to make a mistake? Mm-hmm. Never do this. I was talking to Jim before the show, and I said, I'm going to put back on my RE320 because I want to start recording my audiobook, which I've been saying for about a year and a half now. And I like my voice better on my RE320 than really any other mic. I said, I will just bring down, because everybody said, you're a little harsh on that one because I like my S's and T's. So, I actually, if somebody said, look, I'm an author and I want to start being a guest on podcast shows, this would be it. I would like, what's your budget? And if they go, I'm looking for under $100, Samson Q2U. If you can go up to 200, I would go with this mic because it has those effects that you can build in, and you can tweak the treble and the bass, and it's got a noise gate and all sorts of other things. And so, that's I'm a big fan of it, actually. It's and it's a great weapon if you need it. It's just as heavy as the other one. I was surprised at I unplugged. Well, here, let's just do that.
Oh boy, here we go. Get ready for some noise.
Yeah, some noise. I can't find it. I had the original PodMic here. It's somewhere, and the original PodMic is much more mid-heavy. It's really mid-heavy, and I was like, interesting. So, but all in all, yeah, I like it. I still recommend the Samson Q2U. Chris says the MV7 also has the ability to tweak. The thing that I have with the MV7 is I can pop that thing like nobody's business, because if you pull off the clown nose, windscreen, you can see through it. It's really thin. So I was having a problem with that popping, but it's not a bad mic. You can even buy like different colored, windscreens for that. So, but that's another handy one. I think the MV7 is $250 and the PodMic is $200. So maybe that's why, because I always thought this mic was a little pricey. Like, what about $129? Instead of, because I'm again comparing it to the Q2U and the ATR 2100, which is what Jim has and has had for years. And Jim, that's a great thought. Have you ever thought maybe I should get a different microphone?
Yeah, all the time.
Really?
But I do. But I do average guy stuff, and this is a mic for the average guy. And so I always felt like that'd be a little off brand for me to throw a $500 mic in here. And I don't want it.
Like, and you have $500 in your pocket than other people don't.
Yeah, I mean, I could, but I don't want to. I'd rather spend it on other things. I like this mic. People have said I sound good on it. It works well. The crazy thing is I've had this for, I don't know, 8 years maybe. You can't break them. They're like the Shure SM58s, where they're now I don't take it out and throw it around and travel with it. I know I do travel with it. I've taken these mics on the road before. So I like them. But again, I'm trying to stick to some branding here too, for me, like, to be able to say, no, I do podcasting on a $57 or whatever it is. $79 microphone.
Yeah. I always think you sound great. And you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah. So this is the original 2100. So this is the ATR 2100. They have since changed this model, but you can to the X. I think USB-C is what's in there.
Yeah,
now. I think the internals are still exactly the same.
Yep. The big advantage of that is if you want to plug it into like an iPad, you know, you don't have to go buy
the adapter.
You don't have to go buy one of these basically to connect it.
USB to USB-C.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the AT20, the AT2005, right? That's another the black one.
They also have, or I'm thinking of Samsung has the Q9U, which I've not heard. I did it once at an event and was like, meh. And I've heard other people that have reviewed it and they said it's, you know, it looks cooler, but in terms of sound wise, and I'm of the thought that you can take any mic and make it sound good as long as it's, you know, recorded somewhat decently with, you know, post-production and things like that. So, but speaking of software and such.
Hold on. Before we make that transition, on Facebook, Chris, and I can't send this back to you, Chris. So he'd asked me what interface I use with the 2100, and that's the Motu, M-O-T-U, Motu M2. Big thanks to Ed Sullivan, who I went out to Ed's place, a couple years ago, and Ed has every microphone and audio interface known to man. We tested them all with my voice, and that was the one we liked the best. 179 or something like that. I want to say $200 for that audio interface. I really liked it. Set it and forget it. It's got little meters. It has meters that matter. They're good enough.
Oh, that's a bonus.
They really do work. Works pretty well. So that has been what I am using. So sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Allison says, when recording in Audacity, should you choose mono or stereo, and does it matter? You're a beginner. Well, first of all, congratulations for pressing record. That's a beautiful thing. A lot of people think about it, and a lot of people don't do it. I would record mono. Stereo is where you have something over here in the left headphone and something else over here in the right. If you go listen to early Beatles stuff, they went nuts with this, where like the drums are in the left headset and the bass is in the right and things like that. So that's what stereo is. Well, your voice, you kind of want your voice to be, you know, center, especially if you're doing a solo show. On occasion, if I get ambitious, I will pan Jim a little bit to the right and me a little bit to the left. You don't want to do the thing where I'm in the left and Jim is in the right, because there are a lot of people that listen with one headphone on at work, and all of a sudden they're only hearing half the conversation. So, but a little panning, especially if you and your guest sound similar. Like if I ever interviewed my brother, it'd be ridiculous because we sound and look a lot alike. And so I would have to do some panning there. And that's where you occasionally might want to throw in the person's name and go, you know, so what do you think, Jim? And so, yeah, but I would record your voice in mono, if you're using music, I would then, and this is one of those, it depends. There really is no right answer. I export in stereo, 128 kilobits per second, constant bit rate, which I realize is a ton of jargon. If you're using Audacity, it's going to give you an option to export in variable bit rate, VBR, which stands for very bad rate. Don't use that. That causes all sorts of playback issues. You want constant bit rate stereo is what I choose, because I'm a musician, and when I hear mono music that was big and all of a sudden I listen to it late. Now, for the record, the music of this show lasts about 4 seconds, and I could cut my file size quite a bit if I exported in mono, but I like the stereo sound. So what you can do is export your file. So you call it like test show 1 mono. Then you go back into Audacity, you export it again, and you export it as stereo. You call it test show stereo. You listen to it in your headphones and you vote with your ears. So, Jim, do you ever play with stereo or mono, or, you know?
No, well, I'd like to export in mono. That's just kind of what I learned. I have to go actually back and look. I let Auphonic do, I upload it to their website, and I've got some presets there. I don't think I'm using stereo. To her question, to Allison's question, editing in stereo versus mono is nearly identical. Like you don't, just make sure you're grabbing. It's hard not to, like, unless you separate the tracks. But you would want to, you'll get 2 tracks along those lines. Just make sure you're editing both tracks, and you haven't separated them on separate lines. Basically, when you do it, if you're new to it, you probably haven't done that yet. A little easier on a waveform when it's mono because it's just one waveform across it. But literally in editing, it's not that much of a difference.
Yeah.
And listen, size, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Size doesn't really matter anymore for the most part on audio, because the difference between a mono file and a stereo file, while it can be twice as big, if we're talking about 1 gram versus 2 grams, right? I mean, yeah, that's twice as much, but it doesn't really matter. So I think you can do what you want.
Well, that's like on the sound luffs. I think if it's mono, I should know this, minus 16. If it's stereo, it's supposed to be minus 12 or 4. I always forget. I've got it written down somewhere. I'm always 2 luffs louder. And when I actually exported a show at whatever it's supposed to be, and then I exported it at minus 14 luffs, I was like, okay, that's louder, but it's literally this much louder. I was like, this is what we're arguing about, like this much volume. It's so very slight that I was like, you got to be kidding me. But for me, I remember when I would walk my dog on Detroit Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, that if I listened to a book from Audible, which is at the kind of lower luff rate, I couldn't hear it. And I was like, okay, so I don't want to be that guy that you have to turn your headphones all the way up to even remotely hear me. So minus 16, yes.
Yeah, and I do stereo on my, I just looked on Auphonic and I do stereo. Yeah, there was a comment about the host provider. He says, well, I was referring to the upload size to my host provider, which is a price based on file size.
Yeah.
Yeah. If your pricing is based on file size, and then it would matter. Yeah. I don't know too many host providers that are charging that way.
All of them. Libsyn, Blueberry, it's X amount of money per month. Yeah, like a Libsyn
for file size,
for how much you upload, but you have unlimited downloads. You can have Oprah listen to your show. So that's Buzzsprout, Libsyn, Blueberry. There's one that doesn't. 2, I think. Nope, because Spreaker has a limit eventually. The one that doesn't, it's a flip of the business model, is Captivate. Captivate, you can have as many shows, as many episodes, you can go crazy. But if you go over a certain download limit, which is pretty high, your monthly fee goes from 19 to close to 50. But in theory, if you're getting that many downloads, you should be able to monetize that and pay for it. So, but yeah, they're almost all, there's a limit on what you can upload per month. So it's unlimited, but you have to know, per month what you're going to do. And then it's unlimited download. So it's a little different business model. But
Maple Grove Partners doesn't charge me for the size or how many downloads. So that's probably why
So you're self-hosting?
I am. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, Maple Grove Partners hosts me. So
that's for your website. Are we on different pages?
No, website, media, and website hosting, all part of the plan over there at Maple Grove. So I'm never worried about size.
Yeah, Dan says Megaphone is that way. It's based on
that way
on downloads.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Libsyn Pro is that way as well. Yeah, Libsyn Pro is a completely different business model as well.
Some are based on time, right? They give you 5 hours.
Well, again, here's what they did. We used to say you get 540 megabytes, and people are like, "What does that mean?" Which is understandable. Right. So we said, "Okay, it's 4 hours and 27 minutes." Asterisk, and the asterisk is always at 128 kilobits per second or 96 mono or whatever it is.
I just don't think we should do that anymore. Like, come on, these audio files are so small relatively compared to what data and storage used to mean.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just so small.
Simplecast is one. I used to have a show on Simplecast, and I just wasn't.
Red Circle. I mean, some of the free ones I've been using don't seem to track that kind of stuff. Red Circle.
And in the end, if you're wondering, well, which host should I go with? Well, if you're doing a daily show, then maybe you want something that isn't going to limit how much you can upload, or you're going to export at 64 mono. So that your files are smaller. Just keep in mind, True Native, that's True Native Media. They're True Media Solutions, different one. Buzzsprout is by time, not file size. Well, it's the same thing. It really is. Although
sort of.
Buzzsprout does something that no other host that I know of does. If you upload a stereo file to Buzzsprout, they convert it to mono, unless you choose. And they're kind of, this is an interesting business model. They have like their basic service, which is fine, but they now have some a la carte stuff. So I forget what they call it, magic mastering. If you choose that, they'll keep your file as stereo, but they'll export it at 192. That always makes me scratch my head. I'm like, why not 128? But okay. And they run it through Auphonic for you. So there's that. And now they have the AI co-host, which is another $10. The magic mastering, I want to say, is $6. And then they have AI co-host, which is basically ChatGPT built into, or a Cast Magic or whatever built into it. So they're all a little slightly different. The point I always want to make about media hosts is when somebody goes, which one's going to make my show grow the most? And the answer is they all do exactly the same thing. It's up to you to grow your show. Now, if I drive to Texas, I'm going to take my brother's minivan because it's a better experience and the interface is better. So like one of the reasons I finally got off of Podbean, and if somebody said I want to do a video podcast, I'd probably point them at Podbean, but their interface just drove me nuts. And I was like, I don't know that I would recommend them. So I was like, that's, so I moved that show to a different host. I'm always playing with different hosts, but that's it. So
Todd the Gator says he has a 2-hour shows, so the file sizes are enormous. And I think a 2-hour a full HD video show is enormous, like 5 gig. When I think of enormous, that's what I think of enormous is. Like, and Todd, I get what you're saying. Well, I just think, the average, it's about a meg a minute for audio, depending, again, it depends on how you do and how you save it. But let's just say, so 60 minutes, 60 meg, 120 minutes, in this case, 2 hours, 120 meg. Today, that's not that big. No. Like that can upload in about 3 seconds. So, you kind of, it is, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when we first started doing this, those were large, but that's just not large anymore to me. That's my opinion. You're kind of like, I don't know if there's any audio, Dave, that I would.
If you're exporting at 500 megabytes, that means you're exporting at 320. Yeah. So you back that down to 128. If you're really worried about file size, go 64 mono, and that'll cut that in half even more.
Well, okay, but maybe that's HD audio, right? And that's okay. Even 500 meg for 2 hours. You're going to have at 2 hours, you're going to have a fairly specialized audience. But I guess that's just like, I just don't see that as being that big anymore, from when we think about storage and
video. Though, is something when people want to do a video podcast, if somebody's downloading that to their phone, you just took up a sizable chunk of their phone.
Video,
possibly.
Sure.
Yeah.
But audio, if I had a full fidelity 5 gig video file, but I take those and I use Handbrake and I convert those to a video large and a video small, which are pretty small by the time we're done, right? Just for that reason, because I had listeners who said, I want to watch the video and I don't want to watch it on YouTube. And I said, really? Why don't you just watch it on? No, I don't want to watch it on YouTube. Maybe the ads or whatever.
Yeah.
So we created these. Yeah.
Dan's saying his 2-hour shows are about 100 megabytes. Granted, the original video is 200 gigabytes. But you compress those down. And this is the great work of marketing and the magic mind of one Mark Asquith, who is a friend of mine. I was just on his show. Great guy. I love Mark. He says, big fan of Captivate. All about podcast growth over there. They are. But for the record, every podcast media host is about growth, because if you don't grow, you get frustrated and quit, and then they lose their customer. But I love the fact that Mark's like, hey, we're about podcast growth. I'm like, yeah, so are we, just for the record. But I thought it was brilliant that's kind of like, for the serious podcaster. My Jim, you ready? Since I'm doing imitations today, you ready for my?
Yeah, let's do it.
My one word Mark Asquith imitation. You ready? Sure. Do it to you, sure. Like, I was listening to the show, and I'm like, sure. What is sure? But I asked him once. I go, what is that accent, man? That's I've never. But he's awesome.
Hey, my video large my video large file, 300 for an hour, 345, let's say 345 meg. So like, that's not that big even. And that's compressed down to, that's, let's see, what would be that? What's the resolution on that? 690 by 540, optimized for a tablet. That's kind of the tablet size if you were going to watch it on a tablet, but that's pretty small, So you can do some magic even with the video to get, and against talking heads, it's this kind of thing. So it's not like it's a movie, right? And then I think my video small is even, I think I got that for an hour, half that size, maybe. Let's see if I can get the info on that one. 120 meg for video small at 320 by 180. That's super small. That's barely, that's kind of small phone size. But that's what people wanted. So we crunched it down. You can get smaller on that.
There's a thing, I think in QuickTime you used to have an option where you could export video for like a phone size, like the actual screen. So I don't need it to be, whatever it is, 1020 by 1280, et cetera, et cetera. It was made for the phone, and that would actually do that. I remember once somebody put out it was like high res, and their video was 1 terabyte. And it was like, don't send that down to a phone. So Bandrew Says of BandrewSays.com. If you're not listening to that show, you should be, since we're talking microphones this morning. He's the man. Bandrew, if you can, go to askthepodcastcoach.com/question. I realize it's Saturday morning. You can leave your video off, but I have a question for you. And if not, just say, I can't do it, Dave, and I will ask you your question and we'll play with chat. But he says his typical file size for a 45-minute podcast is well over 4 gigs.
Oh, yeah.
Because, he's doing 4K because we want to see, every hair on Bandrew's face and things like that. And also, going back to the discussion of being yourself, Bandrew had somebody ask him, like, hey, sometimes you're a little wacky, Bandrew. Like, do you ever worry that, like, your show's, like, not as professional as it should be? And that's why I tune in. I know for a while, Bandrew was, like, going to, like, I don't know, Goodwill and getting old Halloween costumes. I remember once, I think he had a pipe and something. And there's nothing funnier than, like, every time, watch, if I do this now and go, everybody's like, oh, is he going to take out did I take out no, it didn't it would almost knocked it over. That would be bad. That'll kill somebody. But, just watching somebody go, you're like, hey, look, he took out. So be yourself, Bandrew. That's the beautiful thing there. So, going back to that, Jeff says, and I was on Jeff's shows yesterday, a really good discussion. I like that. If I do say so, I do say, you know what? I think I was a good guest yesterday. I got done. I was like, that didn't suck. I thought it provided value. What's the pros and cons of a video podcast, us uploading it to YouTube? Oh, wait. Brilliance. Wait, I can just put video on YouTube for free? Wait, that doesn't seem to make sense. Yes, and could we call it, could I then be, you could call me a YouTuber. There's an idea. Yes.
Well, technically you're a podcaster because YouTube calls them podcasts.
That's
now.
it. Yeah. So Jim just purposely trying to poke the bear. I would recommend uploading. Look at Libsyn. If somebody asks me and they're like, hey, how much is it going to cost to upload a video? And I'm like, okay, what was the last file size? And because Libsyn is one of those that, time/file size, I'm like, oh, you're going to need the $80 a month plan or whatever. And I'm like, but if you want, you can upload it to YouTube for free, strip out the audio, and your monthly fee would be like 15 or 20 maybe. And so that's the fun of it. So it's the video thing. Everybody loves it. And again, Bill Maher still does a video podcast. Rob Walsh at Libsyn twisted his arm to start a video audio version, and the audio outperforms the video hand over foot, somewhere between 5 and 10 to 1. So there we go. And I'm dying to know this. We were talking earlier about sometimes the reason people listen is you kind of want to go, wait, what? Coach Dave wants to know, how much does a bag of groceries weigh? And I have no idea what he's talking about. What is the advantage of the podcast tab in YouTube versus uploading it to anywhere on YouTube. In theory, so here's the first question for everyone. How many people use YouTube Music besides Bandrew? I know he does. My answer is no, I never have. I think I did once just to see what it was, to see if my podcast was in it. When you check your playlist as a podcast, presto, it is now a podcast, and it goes to the YouTube Music app as a podcast. And so far, it has not done a lot for me. Are you ready for this? I've been uploading Ask the Podcast Coach to, yes, that thing, Anchor, Spotify for podcasters, which the cool kids are now calling SFP because, it's 3 words. And so guess how many views we've had of Ask the Podcast Coach since I've uploaded it?
The video on Spotify?
On Spotify.
50.
Nope, keep guessing. I'm sorry, you've underbid, or you've overbid.
Oh, 7.
Nope, keep going.
5.
Nope.
3.
Nope.
0.
0. We've had 0 plays of Ask the Podcast Coach on Spotify.
That's good for my ego.
Yeah, because I just wanted to see now on YouTube. It's not fair because right now we have 26 people watching, so we're going to get 26 ticks on that one. But it's a couple hundred. But it's the audio is like double what we get on YouTube. So when I see people go, oh, video, I'm like, look, video is another channel. You'd kind of be dumb to not have something on YouTube if you've got the budget and the time. But if you're burning yourself out, then go with audio. It's a heck of a lot cheaper. Now, Dan, on the other hand, he loves YouTube Music. And Bandrew said, and it makes sense, that because it's the Google algorithm, they're really good at recommending music. And I was like, I might have to go over there because Spotify does a good job for me. Like every Monday, they have a playlist based on what I listen to. And sometimes that's really good and really bad. Dan says YouTube Music, Google Play Music back in the day had family plans before Spotify, so it was cheaper. And I believe that Spotify is raising their price. So that'll be fun. But so that's, I don't know, for me, I'm not seeing any major, bump or anything like that from marking all my playlists as Spotify. I know NPR said they weren't seeing a bump, but that was like 4 weeks after the whole hoopla came about. So it's still a little early, and suddenly I've got a case of the burps. So Todd the Gator says the key is to produce audio blurbs from your podcast and post YouTube shorts. That is something I'm actually looking into for this show because I think I've done 2 shorts on YouTube, and yet when I go to YouTube, the thing I'm totally binging on, like it was TikTok, is shorts. And I don't know about you, I would right now honestly say I've seen enough of sharks. I know it was Shark Week. Somehow Shark Week turned into Shark Month. But yet, you get some great white almost chomping on somebody. I will watch that all day long. And I'll be like, oh, here I am watching sharks again. Look, they're big and scary and have big teeth. And I'll scroll down, ooh, another shark video. Ooh. And then they'll throw in a killer whale just for fun. But so YouTube Shorts, as much as I go, yeah, it's a little blurb or whatever, but I will sit here and I have to be careful when I start watching them.
Do you interact with them in any way? Do you actually I watch them too. It doesn't cause me to do anything. I see comedians and I watch it doesn't, right. I don't personally I don't follow any links in shorts or reels or whatever, whenever I'm doing those things. I don't follow any of those. Now, some of my younger counterparts at work, they're like, oh yeah, I buy all my clothes that way. Yeah. I see it as a part of whatever, and I'm doing, and I'm making a purchase and some of those kinds of things. But I just don't, maybe it's because I'm old, but I just don't interact with shorts or reels that way where I'm clicking through, because that's what they're hoping for, right? It's that in the short, you'll go down and click through to their content and go to their longer form content. I just do you, Dave?
I have been upset by the people that like, yada, 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 here's something exciting, and you have to subscribe to see the end of the video, and I will subscribe, which takes you to their channel, which has 400 videos, of which one of those is the answer. And I'm like, you tricked me, you doggone person. Yeah. And I'm like, but you got a subscriber, to which I go, look at this. And I unsubscribe, and I flip off the computer and go back to watching more shark videos, because that's always going to, the more I can talk about sharks on a podcast, the more valuable my audience will find it. So, but ladies and gentlemen, that's right. Oh, why? I see, I'm using the do. I don't. That's not good.
Do we have to throw things while he's on?
We do.
We have to throw things behind our...
The one and only Bandrew Scott, Bandrew Says podcast. Find him at geeksrising.com with all his other stuff. And you can skip to the chapters if you want, but if you want to watch the video, it's right over there, bandrewsays.com. I think that's your intro, if I remember right. That's pretty much most of it.
Something like that, yeah. I wing it pretty much every week.
So this is for Sean from Be Your Own Nerd, who asked this about a year and a half ago. And I said, you know who would have the answer to this is Bandrew Scott. So and this is funny because I have, it's very old and very dusty, an electronics degree from like forever ago. So we know the whole thing. Like, do I leave my computer on or not and such? And so his thing was, if I have a condenser microphone or microphones in general, should I be turning off the Rodecaster at night? Because that's going to take the power away from the microphone and this and that. And I was like, I've never thought of like, should I turn off my Rodecaster at night? And does that hurt the microphone because it's a condenser mic and you're sending the 5 volts to it? And I was like, Bandrew might know. He might not know. But if anybody's going to know, it would be Bandrew, because you're doing the whole capacitor thing when you're testing stuff. I mean, you go deep when you test microphones, but...
Well, I don't go that deep. I have never heard of a condenser microphone going bad from leaving phantom power on, with one caveat. If it's like the microphone I'm using right now, which has a tube in it, because the tubes, I think they have a few thousand hours of life out of them, but a typical solid-state condenser microphone, I haven't heard of them having a shelf life.
Yeah, that's true. And since you're here, you obviously you have in my opinion, a very popular YouTube channel. It's a great channel. Anytime you want a microphone, you're like, oh, I wonder. Well, we're gonna talk. Have you heard about the what is it called? The Zoom M2 control?
No.
Oh, wait, hold on.
M2 mic track?
Yeah, it's a new thing from Zoom. It's kind of made for. Can you share your screen, Jim?
Yeah. I'll bring.
But it's the new buzz phrase is 32-bit floating.
32-bit floating point. Yeah,
which basically means you can't record bad audio. Is how I've heard people. I've seen people take things that are really distorted and you bring it down and it sounds fine. And the one that really blows my mind is when you record too soft, you bring it up. There's not a ton of hiss, and I was like, how? That's voodoo. But because you have such a popular channel. Do you get more audio than video downloads of your show?
So I do. My main channel, I don't publish audio only. I have had a few requests for that, though, and I am thinking about doing it because I already upload high-quality M4As, 320 kilobits per second, to my website, and there's a way to create an RSS feed out of that. So I'm thinking about doing that. But on my podcast, I get more video plays than audio downloads. Yeah. It's about 2 to 3x in terms of the ratio.
I would think that, because did you start first as a YouTuber and then started the podcast?
I started podcasting first, and the Bandrew Says podcast, the first 8 episodes were audio only, and then I started doing video.
There we go. Well, there you go. Your stuff to me, is visual. Plus, I've got to watch you throw the box.
Yeah, that's the entire purpose of the videos. It's just a medium for me to get my baseball skills and my box throwing skills out there. I'm looking for a contract from the MLB. That's the real reason.
That's it. Excellent. But you have a cool studio. I mean, look at all the gear that he's just surrounded himself with gear, and he has a neighbor that gets upset when it gets loud, things like that. And he's a really good guitar player as well. So.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Very much appreciate that. Well, and it looks cool, but it's a nightmare because just think about how terrible it's going to be when I have to move it all.
Are you moving?
Sometime I have to.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm still renting. I need to own because these people keep raising rents 20, 30% a year. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. That's why I'm living in the house I grew up with. I was like, hey, my sister has 2 houses. I have none. How about helping your little brother out? So
there you go. Nice.
All right, my friend. Any other words of wisdom you'd like to drop before we go back to the chat room?
No words of wisdom, but even if you do have 32-bit floating point, you can record terrible audio.
Thank you.
Because microphone placement is still going to be important. That 32-bit floating point won't stop plosives. It won't stop you recording into the wrong side of the mic. It can still sound terrible. Proper microphone technique, proper microphone placement, proper recording etiquette will always win out.
There you go. And the chat room is going crazy as a new subscriber. He's a must listen. Excellent. All right, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great
Thanks, Bandrew.
Saturday.
Thanks for jumping in. Appreciate it.
The one and only Bandrew Scott. He is literally...
That mic sounds really good.
And he's going to... I thought he was going to throw a box. I was like, wait, if you're going to throw it, I'll put you back on. He is one of those guys that when I see there's a new episode out, like it's not even a thought. It's bam, I'm listening. Like whatever, I'm listening to some political thing. It's like, hold on. He's my YouTube guy. So if I want to know what's going on with YouTube and if I need to worry about it or what, like it's Bandrew 24/7. So keep that going. So
that microphone sounds really good that he has. There's such depth and richness. I mean, you're not going to get that on a $79 microphone.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's where it really does matter. When you get into that range, it just sounds so good. I'm sure he's got it tuned and he's doing some other things with it, but it sounds really good.
Yeah. So Randy's asking, can it hurt to leave a Rodecaster on 24/7? Meh. I mean,
if it's solid state, right?
Yeah.
If it's solid state, if the components to get back to it, he mentioned a tube, right? If you got a tube, they're rated for several thousand hours. Yeah, leaving it on is going to be using that equipment. It's going to use up some of that time you have. If it's completely solid state and it's not hour rated, leaving it on or turning it off, I guess it would depend, Dave. As we think about that on-off switch. And what actually happens to the microphone when it's powered, that you'd have to look in the schematics, right, to know exactly what power is going through and some of those kinds of things. It's a lot like the old fluorescent light bulbs where it actually took more power to fire those things up. Like if you're going to turn it on and off, 100 times a day, it's better just to turn it on and leave it on because the ballast would consume so much more power at startup than it would if it just left the thing on. So I think in most cases you're fine, right, to leave it on. But if you have some questions, check the documentation on your microphone. And there might be the only thing I can imagine is if you've got if your on and off cycle is super harsh or if your power is really dirty.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it.
I put out for a not super duper expensive, but I don't have like a channel strip. I have like a line conditioner. So that anything going to my computer and all that is there.
It's a smart idea to have. I mean, if you're using power strips and they're plastic and they were $3 from Walmart.
Yeah. Dan says the screen on his Rodecaster burned the image into the display.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
I turned mine off at night. That's kind of like the last thing that I'm like, oh, Dave's really going to bed. He turned off the Rodecaster. He's not playing around. This is not a drill.
Yeah, your screen would matter, right? I guess I was thinking of the internals, the sound internals. Yeah, I didn't think about the screen. Yeah, you absolutely could have screen burn in. That's one of the things someone needs to contact them. They need a screensaver to run on the
little Rode logos, some fish,
move around randomly,
flying toasters. We'll go back to the old days.
Yeah.
But you know what? Holy cow! It's 11:30 already, which means, of course, it's time to thank our awesome supporters. And I'm not going to move everything off, but Patreon is having a problem because they moved their processing to some place in Ireland or Scotland or something that ended in land that's not the U.S. And it's causing all sorts of issues. And I know when I got my notification of how much you get from Patreon, it's down, and I was like, oh, I need to go. So I might be, and I would, if somebody said, what would you recommend? I like Supercast, I think is the name of it. I don't know if you can do tiers with that, but I'm looking into that. But there are other things with Patreon that I didn't know, like they've kind of censored people and such. So I might be not dumping, because the last thing I want to do is ask people to unsubscribe and then resubscribe, because there are going to be those people that don't. So I might just say have two systems for a while, but it's just a thought. But anyway, the people that have gone over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome, we want to thank those people. And also, if you want to start a podcast during the month of August, it's a special deal. If we go, you know what? I was going to hit the air horn again, but I know it's just not going to work the way I wanted to. But during the month of August, if you sign up for a yearly subscription, you get a free Samson Q to use. So that also comes with our awesome courses, the coaching, and the community. Check it out, schoolofpodcasting.com/coach. And our spotlight supporter this week is the one and only, he was on a couple weeks ago, Max Trescott, who does the Aviation News Talk podcast. So Max, thanks for being a $20 supporter. We do deeply appreciate that, especially because it's time to pay quarterly taxes. I actually found out that I forgot to mail those last month. I'm like, oops. This website, Ask the Podcast Coach, is on Podpage. If you want to check out Podpage, go out to trypodpage.com. And if you need more Jim Collison, and who doesn't, theaverageguy.tv will take you there. And also homegadgetgeeks.com if you want to type it a different way. It's two doors to the same thing. It's cool. And we're on our journey to 40 patrons. You can do that again by going over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. If you're looking to do a one-time kind of donation, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/support. But we appreciate all that, because I almost did it this morning. I was like, because I think we're down to $200 a month. And I was like, let's see, I spend 24 hours a month putting together this show. And I went, don't do that, because it's going to be less than the minimum wage. I'm like, I don't want to know. So anyway, yes, Randy says, flying toasters for the win. I forget the name of that screensaver, but screensavers were huge back in the day, because you would burn things into the screen.
Well, you still can.
Oh,
I turn Dealcaster. These flat, your modern flat screen, you can burn in as well. Dealcaster says I turn everything off. What's the point? This is from Twitch, by the way. Oh. What's the point of leaving it on? And it's a really, really, really good question. Like, do you even your computer? You could ask this. Your monitors for sure should have. Yeah. And listen, today the monitor, I'm going to get my geek on here for a second.
Oh,
you want to run it?
Oh yeah.
And now, he's been waiting for this. It's time for Jim to get his nerd on.
The modern monitor should shut itself off in most cases. Anymore, they've got a power save mode. The real question is on the computers, do you turn your computer off at night? This is the big debate, because some people are like, oh yeah, I shut it down every time and then I come in and restart it. There are some benefits, especially on the Windows side of things, of leaving the computer on to do updates. It updates frequently. A Mac, not so much, although there's been a few more updates to the Mac recently than there have been in the past. That upgrade cycle, especially for security updates, is a little bit longer in between. If you're in your studio, I think if you have a home studio, or if you're home all the time and you're using computers all the time, but whether Mac or PC, they've got some pretty great power saving modes. So when you're not using, it'll spin things down. It'll save some power that way. I think there is some, it's nice to be able to come down, sit down, hit a button, things pop up, and you start working. That's kind of nice, right? So I think you have to kind of determine your use case of whether you're shutting those things down or not. Now, back to the Rodecaster. If it's got just a power button that's right there, it's super easy to turn that thing on and off. Yeah, in most cases, turn it on and off. One of the things I don't like, though, Dave, is sometimes I get these things connected up to speakers, and when that power button is cheap, and I always feel like I'm running a power surge through my speakers when they come on. Or do I want to flip down and turn off 7 things, turn off the Rodecaster, turn off my speakers, turn off the computer, turn the monitors off, Now, I could put that on a smart switch, to be honest. I could put all those things on a smart switch and say, hey, lady, turn off the studio. And it would it would flip that off and the power would go down. Now, if that's the best way to do that, some devices don't like being turned off that way. Your computer definitely doesn't like being turned off that way. So you got to be cautious in that. I personally, I don't know about you, Dave, I'll ask you here in a second. I leave all the computers running all the time down here in the studio. I just leave them on. But when I walk away, I do have a monitor. All my monitors are plugged into one of the smart switches, so I can just say turn those off. They don't even have to go into power saving mode. They just get complete. Even in power saving mode, or even when they say they're off, they have phantom power being drawn. So you can, I can turn all 9 monitors. Now it's 10. I can turn all 10 monitors down here with one command, right? But I leave the computers on. That's what I like to do. What do you do, Dave? Do you turn your computers off?
I turn everything off except the computer.
Yeah.
So, and that's just, again, probably from, 20 years ago. Everybody was like, oh, you need to leave it on because when you close it down and turn it back on, it heats up, and that cooling and heating is bad for it. And to me, as I say that out loud, I'm like, what's the shelf life of a computer these days? You know what I mean? 7 years, I think, is typically what I will stretch
7 to 10. I think you can get out of them now.
So I'm like, I don't know that it's going to freak out. That's not that, So I leave mine on. I do reboot it typically on Saturday morning just because it's a Windows machine, and that's what I do. And then what I usually do is when I wake up, I come in here, I turn on the Rodecaster, I turn on the monitor. I don't turn on the lights yet. And then I go take a shower. And that way, any kind of booting or whatever, because the Rodecaster doesn't take a long time, but it's, 30 seconds for it to boot up. So that's how I do it. But yeah, I keep my computer on all the time just because it's a Windows machine, and that's what I've been doing for 30 years. So
yeah, they do generate a little bit of heat. They're using some power.
When I had I've had many small offices. And I remember there was one in the winter that I would go in, and I was like, I can't believe it's this warm in here. And it's because I had my computer on. Yeah.
Yeah. In the winter here, it works for me really nice because it keeps it nice and toasty down here in the studio, which is great. If you're concerned about power usage, you can purchase either a separate, like a kilowatt meter. They're not very expensive, maybe $30, or you can get a lot of the smart switches. They're just smart plugs. D-Link makes them. You can get them at any Best Buy or Walmart or whatever. Put it in between your computer and the wall plug. Connect to it with your phone. It will often tell you the wattage that it's pulling. So if you want to see, hey, I'm going to put my computer into sleep mode. Now, most people today, to be honest with you, the desktop is kind of a dinosaur. Most people are using a laptop full time, right? Type deal. And they're just closing the lid and the thing's going to sleep and you're opening it up and it's coming right back on. But if you do want to see how much power you're drawing, you can purchase one of those in between, go into the app. It'll tell you what it's drawing, and you can get some ideas and make a decision. Hey, most computers are going to draw, if you're going to leave them on, they're going to draw between 50 and 100 watts on average. There's differences, right, with stuff, but between 50 and 100 watts. Do you want that running all day and all night while you're sleeping? It's a good, it's good decision to make. On the laptop side of thing, you definitely make sure you want to shut that thing down completely if you're going to leave it off overnight, right? So that you don't wear your battery out. Yeah.
Kenny asks, what about a MacBook Pro's laptop? How does that affect the battery when you leave it plugged in all the time?
Batteries need to cycle. The batteries need to cycle. If you leave them on all the time, it's not the best. That's not the best for the battery. But eventually batteries wear out anyway. Yeah. No matter what you do, they wear out, right? But it's good. Even I bought one of these Blueetti AC 180 solar generators that I'm using as a UPS backup now. It's working great. Even that thing, I'm planning to unplug at least once a month, let it cycle through, and just because it's good for those batteries to cycle through.
Yeah. As you said that, I was like, you know what? I'm horrible because my phone goes from my bedside where it's plugged in. I come in, I stick it on a little stand that's charging it. I'm like, this thing never uncharges.
Never cycles.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll just let it drain today.
Yeah. Well, there's some questions you need to dig in on this. It's kind of based on battery type and some of those other kinds of things. But in the old days, there was some wisdom about batteries that now batteries are different. And so depending on phone you have and what battery type you have, and the way you charge it, it is good. It is a little bit better. In most cases, it lets your battery cycle from time to time. Use it, let it charge down some, plug it back in, let it charge back up. At the very beginning of the pandemic, when we all went home, our IT department said, hey, every once in a while, I know you're home and your laptop's staying plugged in all the time, but every once in a while, if you could, once a week, unplug that thing and let it cycle through if you can. Just better for the batteries, better for the longevity. But again, in most cases, your battery's those things have finite lifetimes. So in a lot of batteries, we're getting better at this, but it is good to let it cycle.
I started my garage sale a couple weeks ago, and John is saying, how have you cleared out your old equipment closet? Lots of buyers. This is where I've sold the Rodecaster 2 that went out yesterday. I've sold the DJI wireless mic. So I still have a Rodecaster 1. I still have a Tascam Mix 8. I have a PreSonus microphone, kind of their version of the SM7. Actually, it's PreSonus's version of the MV7, and a Sound Devices MixPre 6. So what's interesting is I put it into the School of Podcasting. I put it on Facebook. I mentioned it on Twitter and got a whole lot of nothing. Mentioned it in my newsletter and sold like that. Those two things at least. So again, it's the power of the newsletter that it comes in handy, because those people have already said, I want your stuff. So they're already kind of a next layer of people that are interested in that stuff. But yeah, so that's, again, which is handy because taxes were due last month. I was like, oh, oops. Yeah, so keep that in mind. Here's a fun, I saw this one and I was like, sometimes, we were talking earlier about, everybody's got internet. This person said, talk me through hosting a guest. Currently, I use GarageBand to record my episodes. It works great for solo episodes. I'd like to start having guests on my show and not sure how best to do this in GarageBand. I have a Zoom account, so I assume that would be the easiest way to interview someone. My internet is not always reliable, which is my biggest concern and something I'd like to plan for. How do I get the best audio for an interview where the internet may not be reliable, and how do I mix this in GarageBand? And so, again, it's really easy to assume that everybody's on high-speed internet, and not that this guy's on dial-up and stuff. And I just answered him. I said, if your internet is really that unstable, maybe you don't do guests. You can use things like Squadcast, and I think Riverside. Although I was on a show this week with Riverside, and about 40 minutes in, it just quit recording my side. And he's like, it's Riverside being Riverside. And I'm like, I know tons of people that use it and love it, but I also know a fair number of people, I guess you can kind of say that about every advice, but I like Squadcast. And if you were using Squadcast, that, it records locally, so that would solve if there was any kind of weird internet hiccups, but eventually it has to upload it to Squadcast. So depending on that, I don't know. So thoughts on that, Jim? Like sometimes maybe it's just not something you can do.
I want to drive for Uber, but my car sometimes just doesn't start, and sometimes it quits while I'm driving. Well, you probably shouldn't be an Uber driver. I'm not saying you shouldn't be a podcaster, but I think there's some tools, like you said, there's some trickery. We've talked about this before. There's some trickery you could do, or you could record it on both ends and then it would upload as you go, or you can do a double ender. So you record on your end, they record on their end, regardless of how the internet performs. When they're done, they can upload it to you, and you can combine the two together. Lots of editing associated with that. That's probably the best possible solution if your internet's not going to be very, very stable, or if it's coming and going, right, type deal. Then you'll get full fidelity on that end. But the idea of I don't have very good internet and I want to record on my end and don't want to have to make the guest to do anything, boy, that's pretty rough. Yeah. I would say, there's not going to be a lot of solutions for you there.
Yeah, Rob and Elsie, when Elsie lived she still lives in the mountains of North Carolina, didn't have really hardly any internet. And what they would do was they would talk on the phone, but record individually on each one. But that's Rob and Elsie. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's a different story. But
that's kind of a double ender in some ways, right? I mean, that's a good way. That's a creative way of doing it.
Yeah. So Jay had a quick question about the Rodecaster. You sold the 2 and kept the 1. Yeah, the 1's up for sale as well. just the 2 went first. So and everybody's like, why are you getting rid of all your stuff? I'm using a Rodecaster Duo, and I now have room for a cup on my desk right next to the Rodecaster, which is probably not a good idea. But it just gave me a little more room on my desk, which I liked. And I just, to me, this will be, I mean, I always loved the Zoom PodTrack P4, but I was like, it's overkill. Why do I have this? And I just thought I could probably get, the sooner I sell these things, the more money I can get for them. So that was the thing. And I've been working with a financial dude. And if you do anything with Dave Ramsey, he's like, is there anything in your house? Like, have a garage sale. And I was like, oh, my closet is got, over $1,000 worth of stuff sitting there getting dusty. And I was like, let's do that. There is a new AppSumo thing that I've yet to buy. So DR is asking my thoughts on Crystal Sound. And it's kind of supposed to be an Adobe Enhance competitor. I asked the guy, the developer, I'm like, hey, it looks like something you would turn on live. Like I could have, instead of using, like right now I have StreamYard listening to the Rodecaster, I would somehow have the Rodecaster go through Crystal Sound and it would somehow remove background noise and things like that. There was I forget the other software that did this, that it would clean up the background. It was kind of meant for live. And I asked the guy, I go, hey, that's great for live. I personally like, the fact that I have processing on now, some people are like, oh, you do processing while it's live. Oh, you're crazy. So having this remove background noise would be a little weird. And so I said, can I do this in post-production? And he said, yes, it's blah, 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 yada, yada feature. So I haven't bought it yet and haven't used it yet. I've not seen anybody. There is a AppSumo like circle group and there's a Facebook group. So I saw somebody saying, hey, I don't see a difference. Like they ran it through and like, I'm not hearing any difference. So she says, I'm hoping it was users, but there was zero difference. Yeah, you are now the second person I've heard say, I'm not hearing a whole lot of different. So, and right now, the thing I liked about it was, unlike Adobe Enhance, you upload it and you download it and they hope you like it because that's what you got. This had a kind of more or less, how much of the feature to turn on. And so Crisp, that's what I was trying to think of. I haven't had much with Crisp, and the Rodecaster Pro was much better. Yeah. So it's one of those things. And I was like, it's $39. I'll see. I think I might wait on this because I forget the other one. And here's the solution to bad audio. Don't record it. Like, just don't record audio. Well, it's my guest. Their mic is awful. Well, then go tell them to get a different one, or interview one of the 8 million other people on the planet. And I get it. This is one where not only do I have white privilege, but I have podcast privilege that most of my guests have podcasts. Like I'm interviewing Chris from Deal Breakers today. He's got a great setup, so I don't have to worry about bad sound. So I understand that. Have I tried the new Adobe Podcast? I haven't logged in, haven't done it yet though. I had a professional editor tell me about it, and it's good use of AI. Yeah, it looked neato. That's the official. I think that's the adverb I will use or adjective. It looked neato, and it was online, so it was kind of cool. It's kind of like an Alito, which is a neat little program that Colin Gray has. So I'll be interested to see if it works with a tablet, because that's the situation I run into on occasion where, I always recommend just use your laptop or your PC, whatever you got. Don't try to do a podcast on a phone or a tablet. You're painting with peanut butter. But if this was something that would work online, maybe that would be a way to be a solution for the person who wants to podcast on their laptop. I know there are a couple different apps that you can use on your phone to edit and on a laptop, but I'm like, just because you can doesn't mean maybe you should. But in some cases, that's the only choice you got. Again, the one thing I have to learn, I was talking with Jeff yesterday. Yeah, studio sound, he says, is pretty impressive. That's the only reason why I use Descript. And in talking with Jeff and Chris from Deal Breakers, I just need to go learn. And here's why. We do this thing every Friday called Lunch with Dave. And this Friday was just amazing. It was great. And I took the video, and I love the fact that Camtasia, I can now listen faster, but I exported it, and then I uploaded it to this video service I use where I put in chapters. And I was like, okay. Well, then I decided, because it was really good, to put it out. There's a private feed for School of Podcasting members. So I put it out as audio as well, and I had to take the chapters out of the one thing and put it into the chapters into Hindenburg. And I was like, if I was using Descript right now, I would have this all in one. I could go export the video, done. Export the audio, good. And the chapters are there. I was like, yeah, I need to learn Descript. So, and I did see a video, because I haven't really played with it in probably a month, maybe 2, and it looked a lot better. The interface looked a little cleaner. So, and Bandrew is going to chime in here. Yeah. And where did Jeff is scrolling off my screen? Be sure to use the new Descript, not the classic. Yeah, I use the classic when I can't find something, because I knew where everything was in the classic. But Bandrew is saying he just checked with a proper audio engineer, has been working for 20 plus years, and they have never encountered or heard of a solid state condenser going bad due to the number of hours used. There we go. Thank you, sir, for your...
Doesn't mean it's impossible, but
doesn't mean it's impossible.
Highly improbable.
Probable, exactly. Yeah. So, so if you want to check out Descript, they do have an affiliate program. If you go to supportthisshow.com/Descript, that would work. And of course, abuse of the microphone, of course, will shorten the life. So all those videos where I see people running over a Shure SM58 with a truck, I'm like, that's probably not good for it. I'm impressed that it still works, but you're going to need a new windscreen after that. But phantom power probably shouldn't cause an issue or shorten the life due to low voltages. Yeah, that's true. It is pretty low. So there we go. Let me see if I have any other questions over here. Oh, let's do a classic. Shall we do a classic, Jim?
Yeah.
What is a download? When using Podbean as a hosting platform, what specifically counts as a download? When using Podbean, here we go. It provides stats on the podcast that I host. It says number of downloads per episode. Is that actually Spotify, Apple Podcast, downloads, et cetera, or is it simple, basically what's a download? And so if you're on a host that's IEB certified, and that's really important if you want to get advertising, but not so important if you don't want to do advertising. But most of them are. And IAB means if somebody clicks play on a website and listens for a minute, it's a download. Other platforms, I think it's Spotify, it's actually like milliseconds. Like if you click play, they'll count it as a start, I think it is. When you get into Spotify and Amazon, they have these weird stats. And also that counts for if somebody is listening to your show, doesn't matter if it's on Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever, it's going to count as a download if they downloaded more than a minute. And if they have their phone, like I use Cast-O-Matic, and I just, like when a new episode is out, download it to my phone, that's a download, even if I never listen to it. And that's where, I don't know why, but people want to hold podcasting to a standard that we don't hold other forms of media to. Like they go, yeah, but does that mean, people might not be listening to my episode, and then they delete it. I'm like, yeah, and your ad on page 6 of the newspaper and page 27 of the magazine and at 4:27 on AM radio. Like, why are we trying to hold that up to a different standard? So that's what a download is. So if you've ever wondered, there it is.
Well, we hold it to a different standard because we kind of can. Like, in the newspaper example, we don't really have any technology that would tell us if they turn to that page or not, right? It doesn't report back, right? But with downloads, they do. I'm not arguing with you, by the way. I totally agree with you, but I do think we have better technology around downloads and what they are. And even to the point where if you're on a player that can report back, this is a privacy issue. I get this, right? But if you get a player that can actually monitor how far you get, we would know what you listen to and when. By the way, that's happening whether you like it or not in most cases. So we do get a little, the technology behind it, I think, is a little bit, radio is the other way. How do we know there? Yes, it's being played, but how do we know it's in a doctor's office and nobody's listening to it? Yeah. Well, but now we do know. We do have some idea of what ear's on. So I don't want to let them completely off the hook on this, Dave, because I think we're we have some technology that can make it a little bit better of knowing.
Yeah.
The issue is it a violation of people's privacy?
That's the question. When you get into the whole pod sites thing, and
yeah.
you can go poke the bear of Rob Walsh, and he'll start dropping F-bombs. Yeah. That's no fun. We'll do one more quick question here. John asks, when we're talking about crystal sound and all that, doesn't Hindenburg Pro have that? It does. It's called noise reduction, and I love it because it's one knob and it's more, and you just go. So I know what it does is it listens to the noise. It kind of does. You can do this in Audacity, but it listens to the noise and then tries to remove it, and it does a pretty good job. It's like anything else. If you remove too much, it starts taking out some of the clarity. You can make people sound like they're underwater. But it comes with the software, so I would definitely try that. And it was great. I was doing something with Daniel J. Lewis, and I think his air conditioning was on. And so it was just this ever so slight kind of hum in the background and just a little bit of noise reduction, and it took it right out without really damaging the audio.
If the noise is in the voice frequency, in other words, if the noise shares frequencies with what our voice is, and you take that out, it's not smart enough to know. I think some people think it's going through and selectively trying to find that noise pattern. In some cases it is, but if the vocal frequencies share with the noise frequency, this is where you get that underwater sound, because it starts hacking out the voice frequencies as well, and really compromises the voice. So you have to be careful with that noise removal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little is good, and boy, immediately you go too much, it's like, ooh, what happened there? It's not not good.
Yeah.
So, and for anyone that was wondering what microphone Bandrew was on, because it was just like chocolate for your ears, I was on the Neuman U67 Reissue, running through the Universal Audio LA 610 MK2. And a partridge in a pear tree. The most unnecessary and overkill setup for what I do.
I don't think it's unnecessary. It sounded really good.
Go price that baby, and you'll go, yeah, that's a little unnecessary.
But he uses it a lot, right? Doesn't he use it a lot?
He uses a lot of mics, a lot. I mean, he's got, when he goes to move, he's going to need a truck just for the microphones. And what's beautiful about Bandrew is, I'm saying 99% of those he bought.
Yeah.
So he can
but
actually
he's known as a microphone guy. Like, this is where those, you asked me, hey, why do I use a cheap mic? I'm the average guy. Like, I use it because that fits Bandrew's known for his micness, right? And what he does. Yeah, he's got to have a mic like that. Yeah, and I think that's part of his brand, right? I think it's a smart thing.
You know what? I totally get that. Because I would have never have bought a Shure SM7B, but I'm that podcast guy, so I got kind of thing.
Now, do you need the Neuman? No, it's probably a little bit of an overkill for you, Dave, because the podcasters you're talking to aren't going to spend that much on a microphone like that. But $500?
This is a good laugh. In Reddit today, somebody was saying, would you pay $1,000 for unlimited audio editing? And I was like, my friend, the average is around $100 to get your audio edited, remove some ums, and you're done. That's not social media. That's just editing the audio. It's around $100 an episode. I go, and most people won't pay that. So he was wondering, because the other thing is, when he says $1,000 a month for unlimited editing, you're going to get somebody that just basically white labels you and says, I'm an editor, and then passes everything off to you, and you're going to get hosed with that deal. So it was just interesting. One other quickie. Didn't know this existed yet, but I'm sure it does. Did I get a cover for the Duo? It looks like, yes, it's this. It's a dust rag at the moment, and I usually put it over it when I leave. But if they make one, I'm sure it's $50, and money well spent. But yeah, I need to get one, and then use it. A lot of times I would put it off down here, and then I go to bed and forget to put the cover on it. But that's
just to be clear, that's a $7,800 microphone.
Just a little overkill, just a little bit. I told you, I knew it was expensive. I didn't know. Holy. Wow.
Buckets. Holy buckets is what you're looking for.
Does that come with any kind of sexual favor? I mean, holy cow. Geez, Louise. That's insane.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, there you go. Now I like my Samson Q2U even more. Holy cow. So, And Craig's off to feed the horses, and we're off to close the show. So, Jim, what's coming up on the AverageGuy.tv?
Yeah, one of our listeners, Randy Walker, joins us. That's where the M2, the Zoom M2 mic track came from. He brought that up at the beginning of the show. We talk a little bit about WordPress. This may actually be a good episode for the listeners of this show. So it's posted right now. If you're interested, take a look at it, homegadgetgeeks.com.
There we go. I keep threatening to do an episode where I compare a bunch of microphones. I think I've decided not to do that because it's way too long to make a really weak point. So at this point, I'm not 100% positive. I have to go to the archives of Evernote, where I store all my brilliant ideas that come out when I get out of the shower.
Can you take a week off?
No.
Not ever?
Never.
Advertisers?
No. Just like saying I've never missed a Monday in 18 years. It's my ego. My ego won't let me.
All right, I like it. I like it. I like your brand. It's your brand. It's not your ego. It's your brand.
When I was hit by a deer, I always, when I go on the road, I have enough. I have a microphone in my backpack and a laptop, and I have all the files I need to make a show on Dropbox. And I put out an episode while my car was, dying. Bleeding. So, yeah, it's just a Dave thing. Anyway, but I missed many times on other shows. But the School of Podcasting, I got a streak going. I don't want to lose it. So, but thanks to everyone for the awesome questions today in the chat room. I'll have links to everything out at askthepodcastcoach.com/448. And Darren, we will play your question next week. I realized we had another question and I forgot to play it. So I will play that. I did answer Darren's question earlier. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell and smash that whole 9 yards. And we will see you next week with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach.